Thaddeus McCotter, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me on again.
Well, no problem. We're always glad to have you. You've had some changes in life since the last time we had you on. You are now an announced candidate for the presidency of the United States. So welcome to the field, and get here often and return as often as you can.
Oh, I look forward to it. I love New Hampshire. I believe we're going to be up there on August 20th at an event for the New Hampshire Young Republicans. Trying to work it so that we can bring the band, at least entertain them. Excellent.
Well, we just announced that to our listeners, and of course we've announced that there's going to be a straw poll there for that event, and that'll be a good time. And we've got a debate tomorrow night, Congressman, but you're unfortunately not going to be a part of it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we've met the criteria for the Republican Party of Iowa, who's a partner with Fox News. Fox News did not accept that criteria, overruled the party. And so they then looked at our polling data we submitted to them. They didn't like that either, so it is what it is. And I view this as a marathon. So we'll do our best. We'll be at the straw poll on Saturday. We are going to have the band there. And we're going to meet Iowans and talk about issues on their minds and treat it as an introduction to the good people.
Well, that's great. And I mean, it just kind of I imagine, a disappointment to you. But like you said, it's a marathon. And, being so recent in the entry to the race, you got to kind of bite your lip, I suppose, and move on. But what types of issues, would you want to talk about tomorrow night if you were in the debate, Congressman? I mean, of course, we've had the budget deal since or the budget non-deal, raw deal, as I call it. But since you were on last, but tell us a little bit about the deal that's happened. Of course, we've got market trends that are fluctuating. We've got all kinds of rhetoric and ink being spilled from both sides. But what's the bottom line on this budget deal, no deal, raw deal?
I can't find anyone in the field, especially on that stage tomorrow night, that has been able to identify, let alone solve, the fundamental problem facing us economically right now and facing us in the future if not addressed. We are going through a great deflation. This is not a typical recession, as we all know, but it is not simply a deeper recession than we've known. This is a balance sheet recession whereby we are seeing contractions within credit for the first time since the Great Depression. This is stopping any type of attempt to try to address the stagnation that we're facing and the potential stagflation we face down the road. What we need to do is force the immediate recapitalization and restructuring of the Wall Street banks. It is the debt overhang there, and the debt overhang, as we've painfully found out within the federal government, that is causing so many of the problems that we have today. And if we don't address the restructuring of the federal government and the restructuring and recapitalization of the big banks, then what's going to happen is we're going to continue in a period where you see the entrepreneurs and the workers unable to grow this economy, unable to shape the 21st century economy for American prosperity for generations to come. This is a critical issue. Now, and how do we address it? I would argue, obviously, in restructuring the federal government, what we have to do is treat it like every other entity that has had to survive to compete in the globalized economy. We need to recognize that the welfare state's imploding and start consolidating and eliminating entire departments that are no longer functional and no longer practicable in the 21st century. We need to go towards a policy that holds the fact that no longer can the welfare state try to tempt people who are independent into trading their liberty or property for governmental dependency. That simply cannot work in the 21st century, and the evidence is right there before us. And for those who don't believe it, all they needed to do is look at the Standard & Poor's downgrade. In terms of the banks, you have to force the recapitalization, not at the public expense. To force debt for equity conversions, you have to have leverage limits that prevent them from ever collapsing again on the American markets. And the banks that are insolvent and cannot be helped have to be walled off, broken up, and their assets put in a resolution trust corp. These are just some of the things that have to be done. But if they're not, all the tax relief in the world, all the regulatory relief in the world,
right,
and all of it, and all the above energy strategy is not going to be enough to get us out of where we are.
Yeah, and Congressman, two comments on that. In the course of your answer, two things came to mind. One is that I was watching New England cable news the other night and saw Senator John Kerry on there absolutely ripping the Tea Party up one side and down the other and blaming them for all things. So we've got this rhetoric, but frankly, I think that any semblance of common sense that's been entered into this debate has been a direct result of the pressure by the Tea Party. So I would like you to comment on that, number one. And number two, you mentioned the Standard & Poor's. I'm no economist, Congressman, but it seems to me that it's sort of I mean, the rhetoric about why they did it and all that sort of things. I mean, are we really headed to a point in time where yet another major person at the table that has a place in the debate of what policy decisions should be made in this country aren't our electeds, but some credit rating agency? I mean, is that really where we're headed with this thing?
Well, I think one of the things that was so vexing to a lot of us was not the downgrade itself, but the fact that they cited as part of their rationale the political process of the United States. Ignoring the fact that every 2 years we have a peaceful revolution of the ballot box, ignoring the fact that a full, free, and robust debate of a variety of views is something that is supposed to happen in a free republic. And so for Standard & Poor's to cite that strikes me as raising the question is, what do they prefer then? The corporatist communist Chinese model where the state decides and implements regardless of what the public thinks.
Right.
Now, that to me was very problematical and reminded me of a lot of the readings that I had growing up with Jean-Francois Revel and others, where such types of corporatist dictatorial governments look good in the short run, but they're antithetical to human nature, to human freedom, and eventually fail in the long run. What we want to make sure, regardless of what's happened now, is to make sure that we put our fiscal house in order and restructure the government for the future. What Standard & Poor's has done is done, and now it's a question of how we responsibly react to it. And as you point out, with Senator Kerry and others who did not mind their completely unbalanced and unhinged approach to their historic spending spree, now coming back and trying to raise taxes, unfortunately, Standard & Poor's is a bit ambivalent on how you get there. But we know that type of taxation, that type of trying to prop up the welfare state that Senator Kerry supports is not going to work and is going to make things worse.
So, Representative, where do we go to give our feedback to Mr. Standard or Mr. Poor, as ordinary citizens? Because I got to tell you, as somebody who didn't sign off on the credit downgrade, I'm a little bit upset at the sort of concentration of power that this credit rating agency has had. And, the way that this was sold by the president and Harry Reid and even sort of the big media to the American people was, if we don't do something to deal with the debt ceiling, we're in imminent danger of default. But really what everybody was trying to do was trying to, protect the U.S. economy from Standard & Poor's. So, there's sort of an argument here, and I guess the question is, should a credit rating agency have this much influence over the American economy? Is this a good thing for democracy?
Well, unfortunately, it has that type of power, and the danger would be then, as some would argue, is to use the power of the federal government to coerce private sector entities from putting forth their opinions, which would be just as bad as when people talk about our political process being a liability of the country as opposed to what we believe it to be, which is a foundational aspect of our liberty. So I would urge people not to try to wield the power of government to silence those in the private sector. What we really need to do is to get our own house in order and proceed and get that credit rating back as quickly as we can. Right.
And so now where are we headed in the future? Real quick before you have to leave, what is the super committee or the joint committee, whatever you want to call it? What realistically can we expect in terms of cuts and moving forward out of that committee?
Well, what's going to be possible depends upon whether or not the Democratic members come in with an obstinate view that somehow this committee is going to raise taxes come hell or high water, no matter how much it weighs upon the opportunity to get the economy going.
Hasn't that really already been decided in the debate, Congressman? Wasn't that pretty well a hands-down victory that's not on the table?
Oh, it won't be done.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what's possible, and it's going to be entirely dependent upon whether the Democratic Party comes in and understands that we have to start restructuring government, that we have to start putting the fiscal house in order. Or if they come in demanding tax increases, then it's going to be a logjam because the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans are not going to put any more taxes on the American people and further inhibit the opportunity for them to grow this economy and get us out of stagnation.
All right, and once again, for our listeners, we've been speaking for the past few minutes with U.S. Representative Thaddeus McCotter, Republican from Michigan, Detroit native, who is running for president. Representative McCotter, you're going to be in state August 20th and 21st for the New Hampshire Young Republican Lobster Bake in the Stratford County GOP picnic. Is there anywhere that our listeners can go to get more information about you and about your viewpoints?
Yes, you can go to McCotter2012.com. It's McCotter2012.com. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, thanks a lot.
Congressman. Take care.
Bye.
All right, well, there it is, Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. He's always just juiced. I mean, you always have to kind of sit there and picture this guy that's got like a 5-inch thick policy notebook of, and just when you ask him a question, he goes to tab 17 and just goes, bloop, bloop, bloop. I mean, it's great to sit and talk to the guy. I mean, I really groove on policy. I'm a student of public policy, got a master's in it.
Yeah.
And just always love talking to people that are into policy, and clearly a well-read guy, well-spoken, and always great to have him on the show. Don't have any idea what kind of music he's going to be laying on us when he comes in state, but don't know whether he'll have any Guns N' Roses in his library or not. But here we go. We're at halftime.